Hello Baggies fans and welcome to the Baggies Podcast. It's been a very topsy-turvy week again for Albion fans, looking closer to getting our first win of the season, but still not quite getting there. Falling short against Tottenham Hotspur at the Hawthorns 1-0. A close game from all accounts. Had plenty of chances, but we're going to be delving more into that match later on in today's episode. We're also going to be talking about Slaven Bilic's future. Does he have one here at the Hawthorns? We're going to be discussing that and you guys are going to be giving your thoughts. We've also got the first instalment of the Baggies Podcast Man of the Match, where every week I'm going to be asking you guys for your Man of the Match. Obviously we're going to see who gets that this week, and obviously you guys are going to getting involved on Twitter, sending us your thoughts and giving us your opinions on today's game. And we're going to be looking ahead to the Manchester United game, which is coming up in a couple of weeks' time after the international break. So all that to come and more here on the Baggies Podcast. But before we start, if you're enjoying this episode and you're going to be enjoying future episodes, make sure you go and subscribe to us on YouTube, Spotify and Apple Podcast, and make sure to download the episode to listen on the go. Make sure you go and follow our Twitter account at the Baggies Pod. You'll notice we've got a bit of a new look about us today. You'll be able to see a different screen or a different logo on your podcast provider. That's because we've had a little bit of a makeover, and of course I think it looks a lot better now. So without further ado, let's get straight into this episode of the Baggies Podcast. The Baggies Podcast, giving you the latest news, views and opinions on all things Albion. Now available on YouTube, Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And there you go, you've just heard our brand new intro sequence. We got a new thing that I've been working on. Managed to get The Lord My Shepherd in the background of that as well. So let me know if you enjoyed that. Let me know if you prefer the old one. I personally prefer this one. It gives a bit more of a sense of atmosphere, one that we're not used to at the moment with everything that's going on in the world, and the fact that we're not able to attend football matches to hear The Lord's My Shepherd once again. However, I hope you're all alright after a nearly first week of lockdown restrictions. About half a week now into that, so hopefully you're all doing alright, and this podcast is going to be hopefully one that's going to lift some spirits despite the result. It was a good game from West Bromwich Albion. We started off really well. We sort of tailed off towards the 50 to 70 minute mark. We sort of tailed off, but we did actually find ourselves with a good performance. But we'll start off before the game, and that was with the team sheet, which was slightly changed to usual, not one that we're used to seeing. We went back to the 5 at the back. Slaven Bilic decided that would be the best course of action for us, and went back to a 5 at the back. A few changes coming in. If I'm off the top of my head, Robinson came in along with Carl Bartley and Dara O'Shea as this week's changes, with Diangana, Pereira, and I think we were also missing... Who else were we missing? We must have been missing somebody. I think we were also missing Branislav Ivanovic. Now about that, Pereira and both Pereira and Ivanovic have tested positive for COVID-19, and I think that means they have to have a 2-week isolation period, which means that they are to stay at home for 2 weeks, not leave their house, and they'll be staying there for the international break, which is good. I suppose that it's happened now, because that means they can recover, they can hopefully get better in time for the next game. But bear in mind, it is. We do hope they do get better soon, because it is a deadly virus and could, be fatal to lots of people. So hopefully Pereira and Ivanovic come back and are good as new, ready for the Man United game. So we did have a few changes. We started with 5 at the back. We started with Johnson in goal, Donald Furlong left back, Connor Townsend right back, Ajayi, Bartley and O'Shea as 3 centre-backs. We had Conor Gallagher, Jake Livermore and Filip Kravinovic as a midfield 3, and then we played Robinson and Karlan Grant up front. Spurs went for a very sturdy lineup for me. I think that looks a really solid team, one that could perhaps even challenge for the title this season, in Hugo Lloris, Reguilon, Dyer, Alderweireld, Doherty, Højbjerg, Sissoko, Ndombele, Bale, Son and Kane as the front 3 as well. So that is a very decent team if you look at it from any perspective really. You look at that team and you think that team could definitely challenge for a title. Player I have to say I'm going to point out from Spurs is a decent addition in Pierre-Emile Højbjerg. He was really the the functional player in that Spurs midfield. He was really useful. Played a really good game. Worked very hard behind all of the players. and he was sort of that base for them to build on, and I like that. I think he worked really well in that Spurs midfield, and I have to say he's probably, if I had to pick a player of the match from Spurs' side, it would be Pierre-Emile Højbjerg. So we had the two up front, which was something that we're not really used to seeing. I think we tried it against Fulham for part of the game with Grant and Robinson up front. I thought Robinson played quite well. I thought he worked really hard up front. I thought Grant was a bit missing, if I have to say anything. He did have a chance, however, with Furlong crossing it in and him failing. It was a beautiful cross from Furlong, and he just about failed to get his head on that ball and turn it into the Spurs net. So overall, it was a hard-fought game from West Brom. You look back to last week against Fulham, and you look at the way we played there, and you think, do you expect to get anything against Tottenham this week? And I'd say probably no. I wouldn't, I don't think I'd expect us to get anything against Spurs this week. And of course we didn't, but I didn't expect, it was all about the performance. When nobody really expected us to win, but a lot of people were saying on Twitter, it's about the performance. How are players going to react after, what is a pretty crushing loss against, along with us, one of the worst teams in the league. So, we have to say, how did that happen? How did we work out a really good performance today? And I have to say that's going to be down to Slaven Bilic. They looked a lot more energetic, especially in that midfield three. Looked really mobile. I thought Kravinovic played really well. Tried really hard. I thought Conor Gallagher, again, superb. Box to box, engine in that midfield, something we really missed over recent years. Reminded me a bit of, I'd say, a more attacking Claudio Jakob. Someone who's not afraid to get their hands dirty, someone who's not afraid to pick up yellow cards. He didn't today, actually, but somebody who's not afraid to pick up yellow cards and not afraid to get his hands dirty in that midfield. And it was a really good game from him. Even Livermore he worked quite well, putting his foot about, getting involved, a proper captain's performance. And as for the defence, I thought they stood reasonably strong. I thought O'Shea was fantastic. I thought Ajayi was great. Even Bartley was, I'm often a critic of. I often critique Bartley's performance, but he did play quite well. I thought, the desire was there, which is which was different to most games. We played good opposition. Spurs, as I said, could challenge for the title this year. And they're not known for challenging for the title, but this side looks really sturdy. One that Jose's built under a good manager, and they were off the boil really for large amounts of that game. I don't think they played at their best at all. Lots of people saying Spurs were lucky, and I'd have to agree. I'd say they probably were lucky to pick up all 3 points out of that game, and we were unlucky to lose. Essentially, I think we were unlucky to not pick up anything. I thought a draw would have been a fair result, probably, on the balance of things. You think towards the end of that second half, we had Spurs pinned in their half. They weren't getting out. But if you were to look at the things that happened in the game, we had a few chances, one through Karlan Grant. We had a good shot from Robinson, saved very early on. A few decent shots. Conor Gallagher flashed one just wide. Header from Bartley went straight across the goal. That's just off the top of my head what I'm thinking of what happened. Dean Garner came on and looked pretty sprightly. He played up front on his own for part of it, which is not what he's known for. Spurs had their chances, to be fair. They had quite a lot of different opportunities, if you like, and we had a cross that was headed off the line by Dyer. They had an early chance with Son, which was he ended up standing up about 3 of our defenders, and he was one-on-one with the goalkeeper. But they managed to get round the back of Johnston, the defenders, and managed to save a goal from going in. The goal, however, was one that has been looked at by the Albion community in pretty harsh fashion. Johnston, he was really good throughout the game, I have to start by saying. He made some really good saves, made a really good save from, is it Carlos Vinicius? Yeah, I think that's him. And he made a really good save from him. And he looked like he looked really good for most of the game. He played quite well. Good shot stopping as always. But the one thing that again is let him down is his commanding of his area and coming out for crosses. I mean, you might say, wow, Johnston, he's done really well with his shot stopping, but in the end, he has cost us 3 points. He has cost us a point there, and he's given Spurs 3. I mean, I want to be able to say, if before the 88th minute, I would have said he kept us in this game, but he came out halfway for a ball from Doherty, who sort of looped one forward for Kane, and Kane managed to get a flick on it, and Johnston is sort of stood behind Kane. It's you're either going to go for it or you're going to stay at home. You can't be caught up in two minds when you're a goalkeeper in that sort of especially at this standard, because strikers like Harry Kane, they'll pick you off all day if you start making mistakes like that. You've got to come out, be decisive, come out, either win the ball or stay on your line. Now, I'm a big fan of Sam Johnston and his shot stopping. I think he's second to none, and if he works on this side of his game, he could be there in the England squad. It could be one of those, where he just about sneaks in to the England squad if other goalkeepers aren't playing or performing. He's one of the few English goalkeepers in the league who are playing regular week in, week out football. But Johnston, for me, he had to make his mind up there. Are you going to come or are you going to stay? To be fair, if he'd have stayed, he might have just picked that up off the floor, because Kane wasn't getting much leverage behind that. It was only because of the fact that he came out that Kane was able to flick it over him. If he'd have just stayed in his goal, he might have had more of a chance of saving that. But what's done is done. But you do have to say, Johnston, before the 88th minute, he'd kept us in the game essentially, and I thought he did an outstanding job of keeping us in the game for that. However, he's let us down there. He's let a lot of people down with the way he's played, with the decision making that he's done there. However, as a man, he's got to pick himself up and he's got to get straight back into it, and I believe that he will. I believe he'll get straight back up, because he's arguably been our best player this season. He's arguably, he's played probably nearly the best out of quite a lot of players in our team. It's kept us in more games than certainly he's let us down in, so I feel like that mistake has cost us the game. However, other games have meant that he's a lot higher up in the pecking order than perhaps he would be if he'd just played this one game. It was certainly much better than last week, this performance against Tottenham. Fulham essentially were better than us in every area of the park. They played a much better game. They had a lot more possession. They're better than us in every corner of the park, really, Fulham. But today, I felt we matched Tottenham in a lot of areas. The desire was fantastic. I've seen players out there that I wouldn't have thought gave much on normal occasion. I usually think that Furlong sometimes gets himself caught in silly positions. He did a few times today, but then it's the reaction, and he was getting back after players, and he was coming after them, tackling them, getting back and recovering from mistakes. Same with Townsend. Townsend, for me, his tenacity is second to none, but sometimes his positional awareness and sometimes his general footballing brain is not on there. But the fact that he was able to show that desire to get back after players once they'd beaten him was fantastic. And the fact that you've able to, Son and Bale were silent in this game, apart from the chance Son had earlier. They didn't really have much to do with it. Kane, of course, scored the goal, but apart from that, did he have much to do with the game? Played a few nice balls into the over towards Bale and Son, but they weren't able to make anything of it. And Conor Gallagher, really, I felt him and Højbjerg, and it was a really good midfield battle. Kravinovic, another great game from him for me. I feel like last week he was a bit out of sorts, but the week before against Brighton he played really well in that second half. But Kravinovic started moving the ball really quickly, made lots of good decisions in order to pass, a lot of movement, a lot of fluidity in that midfield thanks to him. But yeah, we were unlucky to lose today. I felt that we had enough in us for a draw. Could have maybe snatched the win if we'd have taken opportunities earlier on in the game. We could have created quite a few chances. The amount that we had in the goal, we had quite a few shots on target, quite a few shots. They had quite a few shots as well. So I don't know whether you could say that we could have won that game, but you never know. If we'd have taken chances earlier on in that game, we probably might have. But as I said, we probably didn't deserve to lose the game. We might have deserved to win it if we'd have taken those chances early on. But a good performance, in my opinion, from the Baggies, and one that's a positive performance, because you think about what we churned out last week at Fulham. You have to think: have we come on? Have we been better? It's not really. the thing that we can look forward to. We weren't good last week at Fulham, but this performance shows me that there's still plenty of desire left in this squad. People playing for Slaven, really. And we'll move on to that now, actually. Slaven Bilic, people have been saying about him leaving the club. He's been in an interview. You saw his press conference earlier, and he was, very, very passionate, in my opinion. Obviously knows exactly what he wants to do this season, and that is stay up. And he knows that he's got the passion, but have the team got the passion to deliver with him? We don't know. But we saw today that we've got enough evidence to see that the players want to play for him. So if they want to play for him, then I can only see them staying up, really. They've got every reason to play for him. We're not out of this relegation fight yet. There's still plenty of time to get ourselves out of this muddle. We're only are we only 1 or 2 points inside the relegation zone? If that's the case, then I can't see us. I wouldn't give up now if I was West Brom, and there's certainly no element of us giving up. We're only 1 point away from safety, and at the moment, I can't see any reason why we're giving up at all. So that's really good to see from the Albion players. And obviously, it's fantastic to see that Slaven is still driven to the cause. He was really passionate today. Not that last week was a shadow of the man that we've seen this week, with the passion, with the flair. Coming onto the edge of his technical area, showing players what to do, giving commands, giving orders, and he was fantastic in that element. So I myself would not like to see Slaven Bilic leave the club at all. I think you can say he's been given all that he wanted with the transfers and stuff, but still it was going to need a lot more than those sorts of players to build in this Premier League, and I think that Slaven Bilic should be staying at the club, and I would not sack him. The only reason I can see him going is if he walks, but at the moment, after today's performance, I see no reason to let him go at all. It is now time for the Baggies Podcast Man of the Match. It is time to see how we've been getting on with the Baggies Podcast Man of the Match. So obviously I'll put a vote out there on Twitter for the Baggies Podcast Man of the Match, and you guys have voted. 69% of you have voted for Conor Gallagher as to be your Man of the Match. The options were Gallagher, Johnston, Ajayi or Krovinovic. Johnston probably was, bear in mind this vote was put out there before full time, probably wasn't the best in hindsight, because this was actually before he made said mistake. So Johnston actually received 0% of the vote, Krovinovic with 4 and Ajayi with 27%. Ajayi, I have to say, another mention for him, did do very well. I don't think I mentioned him enough this week's podcast, but he was fantastic, really, really good. Had Kane in his pocket for most of the game and showed a real passion, desire, strong and defensively, good coming out from the back with the ball as well. So there we go. That was what the Baggies Podcast Man of the Match, and that is Conor Gallagher for this week. So I'm going to be totting these up. So I'm going to be keeping a tally chart of who gets which Man of the Match each week, so we can see who is inevitably the Baggies Podcast Player of the season at the end of the season. So we've worked that out. It's Conor Gallagher who's the Baggies Podcast Man of the Match. But it's now time for the fan reaction section of the podcast, where we ask you guys some questions, you guys get involved and give your thoughts on the game. So, we asked you 4 questions this week, the number 1 being sum up today's games, number 2, who was man of the match, number 3, a score prediction for Man United, and number 4, will Bilic still be in charge by the end of the by the Manchester United game? So, let's start with Tim, who's been on the podcast before. He says, the conviction and desire undone by another simple cross into the box, which is a fair comment. It was a fairly simple ball by Doherty and a fairly simple goal really for Tottenham after all the goals they could have scored and the goals that we stopped them scoring. That happened to be the one that they ended up scoring with. Tim's man of the match would be Semi, and it's good to see so many candidates for man of the match. He thinks it's going to be 1-1 against Man United, and he says that Slaven better effing be at the club by the Man United game. I have to agree with Tim there. If Slaven's not there, I can't see us winning the game unless it's somebody like, I don't know, I want to say like Sam Allardyce or something. If he's, I can't see us winning that game if Slaven's not there. Let's see what C. Hawthorne says. So C. Hawthorne says, the effort and application was better, but the lack of composure and quality in both boxes and a keeper that struggles with command in his box has cost us. Grant should have at least got his chances on target. I agree with that. The effort and application was better. We love to see that the effort is better, because after last week they looked like there wasn't them. The keeper did struggle. Yeah, I thought he was fantastic with his shot stopping, but of course the crosses coming into the box, he does look very nervy. So yeah, for that, I'd say I agree, and Grant should have taken that chance, especially that one that Furlong crossed in. You'd expect him to be putting that away, and of course you could hear him shout his expletive after missing the chance that he was very frustrated with himself. He also says that Gallagher was his man of the match. Blokes and Engine never stops. That was our Baggies Podcast man of the match, of course. He thinks it's going to be 1-1 against Man United, and he's not sure about who will be in charge. That performance today might have saved Slaven for now, but ultimately you have to gain points elsewhere. Of course, Slaven, you can never be too certain with these owners. They are tricky people, so you never know what's going to happen to Slaven. I thought that performance was enough to keep him in the job, and that's the sort of performance that you'd like to see from your team. Even if you do end up losing like that, it's the one that you'd like to see. Paul Garber's been involved as well. He says, solid, committed, much improved shape, pressed well and unlucky not to get something from the game. He thinks Robinson was the man of the match, and he thinks Man United are going to win 2-0, and he thinks Slaven Bilic will still be in charge by the end of the season. I agree. I think Robinson was really good today. I don't think we mentioned him much today, but really a good attacking force. A few good crosses, few shots that could have gone in, and I thought an overall better performance from Robinson to one that I've seen earlier on in the season. So I think Robinson and Grant are perhaps going to be a good strike force, but we don't know exactly what we're going to be doing with that. But all told, we played pretty well, and I thought we were unlucky to receive the defeat. But that brings us to the end of the Baggies podcast for this week. I hope you've enjoyed it. It's been fantastic having you along for the ride. If you have enjoyed it, make sure to go over to the podcast Twitter page at the Baggies Pod, and make sure to go and drop us a follow. Let me know if you've enjoyed the new introduction to the podcast, or the new little intro sequence. I thought I personally prefer this one, but let me know if you prefer the other one, and let me know what you think of the new graphic, because I'm sure you can all see it now wherever you're watching, whether you're in the YouTube app or you're watching on your Spotify or your Apple Podcast. Let me know what you think of the new logo. Of course, on the Twitter page, we've got the poppy logo. We got a poppy on the logo, and I think that's the same for the YouTube page, to show our support and to remember the fallen soldiers that died for our country. So we're going to we've put that on the logo for this week, and the coming weeks, for the Remembrance Sunday, which was today actually. So if you've enjoyed this podcast, make sure you go and follow us on Twitter and subscribe to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts and YouTube. And without further ado, I'll see you next week. It's international break, but we'll see you next week anyway. Goodbye.